Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like something deep inside you was still unresolved, like a part of you has been silently waiting to be seen, heard, and healed? You might be successful, responsible, and strong on the outside, but still feel a quiet emptiness within, like you're living for others and not for yourself. If that resonates with you, you're not alone. The truth is that many of us carry wounds from childhood that shape how we love, how we trust, and how we see ourselves today. In this video, we'll uncover the life-changing wisdom of Carl Jung and explore the powerful concept of the inner child, that hidden part of you still holding on to fear, shame, or rejection. Through Sophia's emotional journey of healing, self-discovery, and transformation, you'll learn how to reconnect with your inner child and finally break free from the patterns that are silently controlling your life. You'll also discover practical, guided exercises to reclaim your feminine essence, build self-worth, and experience authentic peace, not just for a moment, but for the rest of your life. Stay with us until the end, because the most important person waiting for your love is you. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. Exercise 1. Recognizing your inner child. The first and most tender step on this healing journey is learning to recognize your inner child, not just as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing part of you who still feels, still hopes, and still longs for love. Start by finding a photograph of yourself as a child. Choose one that stirs something inside you. Hold it in your hands. Look at that little face. Gaze into those eyes. What do you see? Innocence? Curiosity? Fear? Longing? Joy? Take a moment to let the emotions rise without judgment. Ask yourself softly, what did this little girl dream about? What did she believe was possible? What made her laugh with her whole heart? And more painfully, what made her cry alone in the dark? Then, with compassion, write her a letter. Not as an adult who knows better, but as someone who finally sees her. Tell her the words she desperately needed to hear back then. You are loved. You are enough. I'm so proud of you. This act of writing is not just symbolic, it's sacred. It's how you begin to rebuild the bridge between your present self and the child who's still waiting to be acknowledged, embraced, and finally understood. Exercise 2. Listening to her needs. So many of our deepest wounds trace back to childhood, needs that were never met, love that wasn't given, safety that wasn't offered, or understanding that never came. These unmet needs don't simply vanish with time. They stay buried in our nervous system, in our behaviors, in our relationships, whispering, "See me, don't leave me again." To begin healing those old echoes, find a quiet place. Close your eyes. Place a hand over your heart and breathe deeply. Let the world fall away for a moment. Then, gently invite your inner child forward. Picture her as clearly as you can. What is she wearing? How does she look? Is she shy? Angry? Quiet? Sad? When she appears, ask her with full sincerity, "What do you need from me right now?" Then listen. Don't rush. Don't censor what comes. You may hear a whisper, a sob, a forgotten memory. You may feel tears rise before any words do. Whatever surfaces, write it down. Let it spill out. This isn't about fixing her. It's about making her feel heard for the very first time. This exercise will not only soften your heart, it will slowly reintroduce you to the most sacred relationship you'll ever have, the one with yourself. When you learn to meet your own needs with love and gentleness, something beautiful happens. You begin to reclaim the innocence, the wisdom, and the radiant essence that was never truly lost, just hidden beneath years of trying to be someone you thought the world needed you to be. Exercise 3. Conscious reparenting. If you grew up without the love, validation, or emotional safety you needed, the wound doesn't just disappear, it lives in your nervous system, in your reactions, and in your silence. But here's the beautiful truth. You can become the parent your inner child always longed for. You can finally give her what she never received. Start by reflecting on the way you speak to yourself when you make a mistake or fall short of your expectations. Is your inner voice gentle, or is it cold, harsh, and unforgiving? Would you speak that way to a scared little girl? To someone fragile and tender? Probably not. So why do we speak that way to ourselves? It's time to rewrite that dialogue. The next time you feel self-doubt, shame, or guilt creeping in, pause, breathe. Imagine your inner child standing in front of you, maybe with tears in her eyes, maybe hiding behind shame. Speak to her softly. Wrap her in the words she never heard. You are enough. You are valuable. You are loved, just as you are. You don't need to earn worth. You already are worthy. This is what conscious reparenting looks like. It's not about pretending the past didn't hurt. It's about meeting yourself with compassion now. It's about becoming the safe, nurturing, steady presence your younger self needed but never had. And when you commit to reparenting yourself with kindness instead of criticism, patience instead of punishment, you start to soften. You start to heal. And you begin to experience a kind of peace that only comes from feeling truly accepted by yourself. The power of feminine energy and its connection to the inner child. So many women carry a heavy burden, a quiet grief for the parts of themselves they had to silence just to survive. From a young age, we're told to be good girls, to be polite, to make others comfortable, to smile through pain, to hide our anger, our intuition, and even our joy. And slowly, we lose touch with our feminine energy, the very essence of who we are. Feminine energy is not a weakness. It is a force soft, yet wild, intuitive, yet powerful. It's the ability to receive love without shame, to flow instead of forcing, to feel deeply without apologizing for it. But when we grow up disconnected from that energy, it becomes buried under layers of performance and perfectionism. Healing your feminine essence begins with healing the little girl inside you, the one who was taught that being emotional was too much, that being sensitive made her weak, and that being expressive made her inconvenient. That little girl learned to survive, not thrive. And now, it's time to bring her home. Exercise 4, honoring your feminine essence. To truly honor your feminine energy, you must slow down and turn inward. Ask yourself, what would bring me joy right now? Not what's expected, not what's productive, not what pleases others. What would nourish your soul? Set aside a sacred moment in your day just for you. No guilt, no justifying. This is your time to come alive again. Maybe it's dancing barefoot in your living room to a song that stirs something wild in you. Maybe it's painting with no plan, just letting your emotions pour onto the canvas. Maybe it's sitting in stillness with a warm cup of tea, feeling the quiet power of simply being. Do what awakens the softness and creativity that the world tried to tame in you. And above all, let go of the need to control everything. Femininity cannot blossom in rigidity. It flourishes in trust, in trusting your body, your intuition, your timing, and your worth. When you begin to honor your feminine essence, something magical happens. You return to a version of yourself that's more alive, more magnetic, and more you than you've ever known. Because the truth is, you don't need to become anything. You just need to remember who you were before the world told you to forget. Exercise 5, breaking the wound of rejection. One of the deepest wounds we carry within us, often hidden behind perfectionism, people-pleasing, or emotional distance, is the fear of rejection. And this fear rarely begins in adulthood. It usually takes root in childhood, when we were taught, whether directly or subtly, that love had conditions. Maybe you were only praised when you were obedient, quiet, or achieved something. Maybe your tears were met with eye rolls. Maybe your true feelings were dismissed as being too sensitive. Over time, you began to associate authenticity with rejection. You learned that to be accepted, you had to edit yourself, your voice, your emotions, your truth. But here's the most powerful truth of all. You don't have to change who you are to be loved. You never did. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Take a moment now. Recall a memory where you felt deeply rejected by a parent, a friend, a partner, or even society. Sit with it. Let it rise. Then gently ask yourself, did that rejection truly define my worth? And answer from your soul, no. I am worthy of love simply because I exist. Because rejection isn't always about you. Often, it's a mirror reflecting someone else's pain, fear, or limitations. Their inability to love you had nothing to do with your lovability. Healing begins when you stop internalizing the wounds others projected onto you. It begins when you stop running from the fear of not being enough and instead return to the sacred truth that you always were. Conclusion of this section. Healing your inner child is not just a practice. It's a homecoming, a radical, brave act of self-love. It's sitting beside the version of you that was never given the space to feel, cry, wonder, or speak her truth, and finally saying, I see you now. I hear you, and I will never abandon you again. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That means every unhealed wound, every buried emotion, every suppressed need will continue to echo in your relationships, your choices, and your self-worth until you face it with compassion. We've now taken the first steps recognizing the inner child, listening to her voice, reparenting her with love, and confronting the old pain of rejection. But there is something else we must now explore, how these wounds have quietly stolen something even more sacred, your feminine energy, your softness, your sensuality, your creativity, and your emotional freedom. Reclaiming that is the next part of your healing journey, the connection between the inner child and feminine energy. Feminine energy is not about appearance or gender. It's a sacred force that lives in all of us. It's the part of your spirit that receives love, that flows with life instead of forcing it. It's the intuitive whisper that says, slow down, you're safe. It's the playfulness, the sensuality, the vulnerability, and the beauty of simply being. But for many women, that energy was suppressed early on. Maybe you were taught that emotions are messy, that softness is weakness, and that being too expressive made you undesirable or too much. Maybe you grew up in a world that praised achievement, control, and logic while shaming intuition, rest, and sensitivity. And so, your inner child who once danced freely, dreamed boldly, and cried without shame learned to shrink, to hide her essence, to trade joy for performance, to wear strength like armor, not realizing it was slowly burying her truth. Jung taught that the inner child archetype is the root of our spontaneity, creativity, and emotional aliveness. So, if you find it hard to relax, to enjoy pleasure without guilt, or to express your femininity without fear, you're not broken. You're just blocked. You've been trying to survive in a world that asked you to abandon yourself. And now it's time to return to heal the girl within and let her lead you back to the woman you were always meant to be. Exercise 6. Reconnecting with feminine energy through your inner child. To unlock your feminine energy, you must first revisit the most innocent, untamed parts of you, the child who once felt connected to herself without shame. Think back. Was there a moment when you felt completely free? Uninhibited? Joyful? Maybe you were twirling in the backyard, painting wild colors, singing at the top of your lungs, or lying in the grass, staring at the sky. Close your eyes and recall that moment. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you before the world asked you to be anything else? Then ask yourself this: what aspects of my childhood made me feel most alive, most like me? Make a list. Let it pour out from your heart, skipping rope, dancing in the kitchen, writing poetry, building forts, dressing up, imagining worlds. Now choose one thing on that list and do it this week. No excuses. No judgment. Recreate the space for your inner child to breathe again. Because the truth is, those playful, soulful activities weren't childish. They were medicine. They were your natural expression of feminine energy before life told you to tone it down. When you reconnect with those lost pieces of yourself, you begin to awaken the woman you were born to be: radiant, intuitive, magnetic, and free. Exercise 7. Allowing yourself to be without fear of judgment. So many of us were taught to perform rather than be, to make ourselves palatable, to hide our joy when it was too loud, our tears when they were too messy, and our truth when it was too much. Over time, we learned to keep our brilliance behind a mask, fearing judgment more than we craved freedom. But what if you could begin to shed that fear? Start by identifying one area in your life where you feel restrained, where your soul longs to express itself, but your mind whispers, be careful. Maybe you want to dance in the kitchen, speak up in a meeting, wear something bold, or write what you really feel, but something holds you back. Ask yourself gently, where does this fear come from? Who taught me that it wasn't safe to be myself? Who told me I had to shrink to be accepted? Then do one small thing that defies that belief. Dance. Even if your movements feel awkward. Cry. Even if no one understands why. Laugh loudly. Write without erasing. Say what's in your heart without trying to package it neatly. Because when you permit yourself to be, you reconnect with the little girl who was once unapologetically free. The one who sang off key without shame, who played dress up without worrying about what anyone thought. She never needed approval to be radiant, she just was. Let her lead you home. The mother archetype and the inner child. Carl Jung spoke of the mother archetype as one of the most powerful symbols within the human psyche. At its purest, this archetype is the source of nurturing, comfort, and unconditional care, not just for others, but most importantly, for yourself. But if you grew up with a mother or a caregiver who withheld love, who only offered praise when you performed, or who was emotionally unavailable, then your ability to self-nurture may be fractured. Maybe you grew up believing that rest was laziness, that your needs came second, that self-care was selfish. And now, as an adult, you still push yourself relentlessly, never quite believing you've earned the right to slow down or feel worthy without proving something. You may find yourself driven to exhaustion, constantly trying to do more, achieve more, be more, because deep down, your inner child is still waiting for someone to say, you've done enough. You are enough. But here's the sacred truth. You are now the mother to your inner child. You don't need to wait any longer for someone else to give you the love you missed. You have the power to provide it now with tenderness, consistency, and care. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Exercise 8. Becoming your mother. Begin by listening to your inner dialogue. How do you speak to yourself when you're struggling? When do you fail? When you don't meet your expectations? Would you say those things to a child standing in front of you, trembling and unsure? Would you tell her she's a failure? That she's not enough? Of course not. You would kneel beside her. You would wrap your arms around her. You would whisper, "You are safe. I'm here. I love you." Now it's time to offer that same grace to yourself. Visualize your inner child standing before you. Maybe she's holding a worn-out stuffed animal. Maybe her eyes are full of tears. Maybe she's just waiting to be seen. Look into her eyes and say what she's waited a lifetime to hear. You are so loved. You matter. You don't need to earn rest. You are not too much. You are just right. When you begin treating yourself with the compassion and gentleness of a loving mother, something extraordinary happens. You stop searching for validation outside of you. You stop begging others to give you what you can finally offer yourself. You become rooted, whole, enough, pleasure and feminine energy, breaking free from guilt, pleasure, joy, play. For so many women, these aren't just foreign concepts, they're buried beneath layers of guilt, shame, and generational programming. Maybe you were taught that pleasure was indulgent, that smiling too wide, relaxing too long, or enjoying life without guilt meant you weren't working hard enough, caring deeply enough, or being useful. Maybe every time you tried to rest, a voice in your head whispered, "You haven't earned it." But Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole, by integrating all parts of yourself. Not just the disciplined parts, not just the productive, responsible, strong parts, but also the parts that laugh, that want, that crave beauty, that long to feel alive. Pleasure is not a sin. It's your birthright. It's your feminine energy in motion. And if guilt rises when you enjoy something, when you say no, when you choose yourself, that's not your truth. That's your inner child, remembering a time when her joy made someone else uncomfortable, when her happiness was shamed, when her voice was silenced. But you are no longer that helpless little girl. You're a woman who gets to choose differently now. You get to feel pleasure and call it sacred. You get to rest and call it necessary. You get to exist and enjoy existing without asking anyone for permission. Exercise 9. Practicing pleasure without guilt. So many of us carry an invisible burden, the belief that joy must be earned, that pleasure is selfish, and that rest or enjoyment must be justified with productivity. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that feeling good without doing enough made us lazy or indulgent. And that belief? It's not yours. It's inherited. It's conditioned. It's outdated. But your soul doesn't thrive in deprivation. It blossoms in joy. Today, I invite you to do something radical in its simplicity. Choose pleasure. Make a list, yes, a real list of the things that bring you joy, but serve no practical or productive purpose. Things that make you feel soft, silly, inspired, alive. Maybe it's painting without a goal, singing in the shower, soaking in a bubble bath, dancing to your favorite song, or curling up with a book that makes your heart ache the best way. Then choose one thing and do it. Not because it's useful, but because you deserve to feel good. And when guilt rises, and it likely will pause, breathe. Place your hand over your heart and remind yourself with gentleness, I deserve to enjoy life without justification. This simple act of receiving pleasure without guilt begins to unwind decades of repression. It tells your inner child, you're safe now. You're allowed to play. You're allowed to feel good. Because healing isn't just about digging through the pain, it's also about reclaiming your right to delight in being alive. Healing your inner child is returning to your true feminine self. Healing your inner child is not just about remembering old wounds. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were lost in the process of growing up in a world that taught you to be smaller than you truly are. It's about reconciliation, bringing your tenderness, your playfulness, your creativity, your spontaneity, and your emotions back into your adult life without shame. When you begin to honor your inner child, you don't just change the way you see yourself, you change the way you live. You soften, you open, you awaken your feminine essence in its purest, most radiant form, and the effects ripple outward, touching how you love, how you relate, how you trust, and how you express your truth. The inner child and romantic relationships, self-esteem, and confidence. It's often said that relationships are mirrors, and no mirror reflects more clearly than the one held by our most intimate connections. If you've ever felt unworthy of love, overly anxious when someone pulls away, or terrified of being abandoned even when things seem fine, it might not be about your partner. It might be about the little girl inside you who still doesn't feel safe. Because here's the truth. Many relationships fail, not because you're unlovable, or because you haven't found the right person, but because your inner child is still calling the shots, seeking what she never received. Jung taught that what we don't heal within ourselves, we project onto others. If you never received unconditional love, you may cling to partners hoping they'll finally fill that void. If you learned that love had to be earned, you may mold yourself to please others, losing your voice in the process. If you were abandoned emotionally or physically, you may sabotage relationships before they can leave you. And unless these wounds are made conscious, they'll repeat again and again. But when you begin to heal that little girl inside of you, when you tell her, you are already enough, you don't have to perform to be loved, everything changes. You no longer look for love from a place of desperation. You show up in relationships whole, not broken. And that shift is powerful. The impact of the inner child on self-esteem. Self-esteem doesn't come from affirmations alone. It's built in childhood brick by emotional brick. If your love was conditional growing up, given only when you succeeded, pleased others, or hid your true feelings, then today, you may feel like you're never quite enough. You may hustle endlessly, achieve constantly, and still feel empty inside, because part of you still believes that who you are isn't worthy unless you're doing something right. Jung reminds us that real self-love comes when we accept all of ourselves, not just the polished parts, but the messy, vulnerable, and imperfect ones too. Exercise 10. Affirming your worth. Find a photo of yourself as a child. One where you look pure, unfiltered, and untouched by the world's expectations. Hold it gently. Look at her. Breathe. Now speak to her. Aloud if you can. You are enough just as you are. You don't have to earn love. You are worthy of kindness, safety, and joy. Feel the truth of those words. Let them reach the parts of you that never got to hear them when it mattered most. Repeat them as often as needed. Let them become the foundation upon which your adult self stands. How the inner child affects confidence. Confidence doesn't grow from perfection. It grows from permission, the permission to show up, to speak, to risk, to be seen. If your thoughts and feelings were dismissed as a child, if you were told to be quiet, to stop being sensitive, to hide your dreams, then you may still hesitate today. You may second-guess your decisions, silence your opinions, or swallow your truth to avoid disapproval. But your voice matters. Your ideas matter. Your intuition matters. Confidence isn't about never being afraid. It's about choosing to trust yourself anyway. Exercise 11. Building confidence. The next time you feel that familiar self-doubt rising, whether it's before a difficult conversation, a creative risk, or an act of vulnerability, pause. Ask yourself, if my inner child were here right now, what would I say to make her feel safe? Say those words out loud to yourself. With love, you might whisper, I've got you. Or, it's okay to be scared and still show up. Or, your voice is important. Keep going. Each time you speak gently to yourself, in moments of fear, you rewire the belief that you must be perfect to be worthy. You plant the seeds of trust, and slowly, you rise. Because the truth is, your confidence doesn't come from never falling, it comes from knowing you can get back up again and again without abandoning yourself. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Sophia's story, a journey back to herself. Sophia had always worn strength like a perfectly tailored coat. It looked good on her. It fits the image. She was the woman who had it all together, organized, reliable, composed. At least, that's what she wanted everyone to believe. But behind that polished exterior was a woman quietly crumbling. In the silence of her thoughts, away from the noise and expectations, Sophia felt lost. Not broken, just deeply, achingly disconnected from herself, from her joy, from something sacred that she couldn't name. As a child, she was taught that love had rules. That, to be accepted, she had to earn it. Be the perfect daughter, the model student, the dependable friend, there was no space for fear, no room for anger. Emotions that didn't align with being a good girl were quickly shut down. Sophia, don't be dramatic. Stop crying over nothing. Good girls don't complain. And so, she learned to smile when she wanted to scream, learned to be agreeable, even when her heart said no. Slowly, she became a master of emotional invisibility, never too much, never a burden. By the time she reached adulthood, those invisible rules had wrapped themselves around her like chains. She had built a life that looked perfect on paper. A prestigious job, financial success, an apartment with high ceilings, and perfectly aligned throw pillows. But in matters of love, she always ended up empty-handed. Relationships felt like a tightrope. She gave too much and felt used. Or she built emotional walls and pushed people away before they could hurt her. And still, she blamed herself. Maybe I'm just not enough. One evening, after yet another romantic disappointment that left her hollow, she found herself at dinner with her best friend, Laura. The look on Laura's face wasn't pity, it was compassion. And it pierced through Sophia's emotional armor like sunlight through a crack. Sophia, Laura said softly, have you ever worked on healing your inner child? Sophia furrowed her brow. My what? Your inner child. The part of you that's still stuck in childhood, carrying old wounds, fears, and beliefs that are shaping your life today without you even realizing it. Those words echoed through her for hours. That night, she sat on her bed and searched online. She found an article about Carl Jung's theory of the inner child. Every word hit like a truth she'd forgotten she knew. Until the unconscious is made conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Tears welled up in her eyes. Was this why she always ended up in the same painful patterns? She decided to try something new, something scary. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to connect with the little girl she once was. Slowly, an image formed in her mind, herself at 7 years old, knees pulled to her chest, eyes filled with sadness. She looked so small, so unseen. Hi, little one, Sophia whispered in her mind. The girl looked up cautiously. You're not going to scold me, are you? Sophia's chest tightened. She knelt beside her, tears now streaming down her cheeks. No, she whispered. I'm here to listen to you. The child sighed, her voice trembling. I'm tired of trying to be perfect. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. In that moment, decades of unspoken pain broke wide open. She took the child's hand gently. You don't have to be perfect, she said. I just want you to be you. The girl looked up with watery eyes, her voice small. Really? Yes, Sophia nodded. Really. That night, she sat with a pen and wrote a letter she never knew she needed to write. Dear little Sophia, I'm sorry for not listening to you before. I'm sorry for demanding that you be strong when all you wanted was to be free. From now on, I promise to see you, to care for you, to never ignore what you feel again. When she finished, something shifted inside her. Not a grand cinematic moment, but a quiet, soul-level peace. For the first time in years, she slept deeply, safely, as if someone herself was finally watching over her. The next morning, she awoke with a thought so clear, it that felt like a voice from within. Do something different today. Instead of rushing into her usual routine emails, calls, problem-solving, she made a cup of tea, played soft music, sat in silence. And for the first time, she felt her presence. She picked up a childhood photo and stared at it. A little girl with wide, tender eyes and a sadness she had hidden even back then. How did we get here? She whispered. She didn't need an answer. She just needed to stop running. Jung once said, haste is a form of evasion. And Sophia knew now her busyness had been a way to avoid herself. But not anymore. She opened her journal and wrote, Today, I decided to listen to myself, to stop forcing and start feeling, to stop performing and start becoming. I am done living by invisible rules. As she wrote, old echoes surfaced. You can't do that. You shouldn't say that. Don't be so emotional. But for the first time, those voices didn't feel like truth. They felt like cages, and she was ready to break free. But who had written those rules? As Sophia sat with her thoughts, journaling through the morning light, she realized something quietly revolutionary. Most of the beliefs that shaped her about worth, about love, about success weren't hers. They were hand-me-downs, passed from family, culture, old teachers, and painful moments that had nothing to do with her truth. She had been living by rules written in someone else's handwriting. Rules like, don't be too much, keep people comfortable, your needs come last, stay small so others don't feel threatened. But now, for the first time, Sophia saw she had a choice. She could either keep repeating a script written by fear, or she could write a new one, from love. She stood up, walked to the mirror, and stared into her own eyes. Her voice trembled slightly, but her words carried a newfound strength. You're not that scared little girl anymore, she whispered. You're a woman now, a woman who can make her own decisions. And just like that, a spark ignited, quiet but undeniable. A pulse of power, a return. She knew she needed to go deeper. Later that day, she wandered into a local bookstore. There was something about the smell of old pages and the gentle hush of shelves lined with wisdom that always calmed her. As she scanned the psychology section, one sentence leaped out at her from a book cover. The process of individuation is the path to integrating the complete self. Her breath caught. That's what she'd been doing without even knowing the name of it. Individuation. The merging of all her pieces, the wounded child, the strong woman, the playful dreamer, the fierce truth-teller. All of her was welcome at the table. She bought the book, tucked it under her arm like a promise, and walked to the park. There, she watched children run barefoot in the grass, laughing without a care in the world. Their joy was wild and unfiltered, and suddenly, a question hit her like a wave. When did I stop being like that? She remembered how she used to dance in the rain as a child, arms stretched wide, squealing with laughter, not worrying about getting dirty. But then the voices came, stop that, you'll catch a cold, you need to behave. And she had stopped, not just dancing, but being. That afternoon, when the clouds rolled in and the first raindrops fell, Sophia didn't run for cover like she usually did. Instead, she stepped into the open, lifted her face to the sky, and let the rain kiss her cheeks. Cool, cleansing, free. This is for you, little Sophia, she whispered. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to play. No agenda, no performance, just joy, just presence. And in that moment, she understood that healing her inner child wasn't about digging through old pain forever. It was about reviving the parts of herself that still knew how to live. When she returned home, she drew a hot bath and lit a candle. Her heart felt full, not because everything was fixed, but because something sacred had been remembered. She soaked in silence, letting the warmth hold her, replaying the rain on her skin and the freedom it stirred. Healing, she realized, wasn't a one-time event. It was a process, a journey of returning again and again to herself. But she had no idea that in the days to come, her newfound peace would be tested. Because the moment you stop abandoning yourself, the world around you notices. And not everyone is ready for your awakening. The following days were nothing short of an emotional roller coaster. There was lightness, yes, a sense of calm she hadn't known before. But beneath that peace stirred something else, resistance. Not from others at first, but from within. Parts of her that had lived by fear for so long began to panic. Who are you without your people-pleasing? What if they don't like this new you? And then it started happening. She noticed it when her boss casually asked, Sophia, can you stay a couple more hours? If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. The old Sophia would have said yes without thinking, even if she was exhausted. But something inside her, the part that had played in the rain, that held her boundaries like sacred gates rose and said no. She took a deep breath. No, I can't today. I commit myself. Her boss looked surprised. Are you okay? You never refused to stay late. Sophia smiled, not with defiance, but with clarity. I'm okay. I'm just learning to put myself first. And there it was, a boundary firm, kind, unapologetic, set without guilt, held with grace. That night, over dinner with Laura, she shared what had happened. I feel different, Sophia said, stirring her tea. But I also feel like some people around me don't like this change. Laura nodded slowly. That's because they were used to you putting yourself last. When you start truly loving yourself, you see how many relationships were built on you not valuing yourself. Sophia felt a chill run through her body. The truth of that sentence landed hard. How many times had she chased people who ignored her, made excuses for those who hurt her, dropped everything for people who wouldn't do the same for her? But not anymore. She wasn't going to abandon herself to keep others comfortable. Then came the message. Her ex, Daniel, texted her, "You seem different lately. Is everything okay?" In the past, that message would have unraveled her. She would have reread it 100 times, questioned herself, and drafted long replies trying to explain. But this time, she didn't spiral. Instead, she smiled softly, because yes, everything was more than okay. Still, she didn't reply. Not yet. First, she needed to check in with herself. She sat on her bed, closed her eyes and whispered, "Little Sophia, what do you need right now?" The answer came like a wave of knowing. "I just want you to choose me." Tears rolled down her cheeks. All this time, she had waited to be chosen. By friends, by lovers, by the world. But what she needed, what she longed for, was to be chosen by herself. So she opened her eyes, took a deep breath, and deleted the message not out of bitterness, but from a place of quiet power, because her peace no longer depended on someone else's response. Her worth no longer hung in someone else's hands. That night, she slept like a woman who had come home to herself, with stillness, with softness, with certainty. The next morning, Sophia walked through the city streets as if they had been freshly painted. The buildings were the same, the sidewalks still cracked in familiar places, and the air just as brisk, but everything felt different. Because it wasn't the world that had changed, it was her. She moved through the morning like a woman finally inhabiting her own body shoulders. Relaxed, breath deeper, eyes clearer. She felt lighter, not because life had become easier, but because she had finally put down the weight of pretending. She felt stronger, not in a forceful way, but in the kind of strength that comes from being rooted. She felt freer like a bird who had just realized the cage door had been open all along. But deep down, she knew her journey wasn't over, because the final test of healing never comes from the people around us. It comes from within. It comes from the shadows, the parts of ourselves we've hidden, rejected, or buried so deeply we forget they exist. The parts that still whisper, "You're not enough," even when you're standing tall. Carl Jung had taught her this truth. The shadow is everything we refuse to see about ourselves, and when left unacknowledged, it rules us from the unconscious. Sophia had done beautiful work healing her inner child. She had softened her heart, reclaimed her voice, and dared to choose herself. But there was still a deeper fear within her, a wound that hadn't yet been brought into the light. And then, life handed her the mirror. It was a call from her mother. "Sophia, can you come home? It's been a while since we spent time together." Those words, so simple, tightened something in her chest. Her mother was not cruel, but she had been emotionally distant, critical, and unyielding. As a child, Sophia had longed for affection, but received only instructions. Don't cry so much. Don't be weak. Don't think you're so important. Even now, as an adult, those words echoed like ghosts. But this time, Sophia didn't flinch. She didn't make an excuse or avoid the discomfort. She breathed deeply and said, "Okay, Mom, I'll see you this afternoon." When she arrived at the house she'd grown up in, memories came rushing back. The walls hadn't changed. Neither had the smell of the old pinewood floors or the hum of silence between words. It was like stepping into the past, but this time, she was no longer the same little girl. Her mother greeted her with the same neutral tone she always had. "It's good you came," she said. Sophia nodded and smiled politely. They sat across from each other with coffee between them, and soon enough, the old familiar pattern returned. "You seem different lately, Sophia." I don't know if it's for better or worse. In the past, that comment would have sent Sophia spiraling into guilt, second-guessing every choice she'd made. But not today. Today, she saw it for what it was: not truth, but projection. Jung once said, "What you criticize in others is often what you haven't healed in yourself." Sophia took a slow breath and looked her mother in the eyes. "Yes, I've changed," she said calmly, "and I feel good about it." Her mother frowned slightly. "What was wrong with how you were before?" Sophia's smile was soft but unwavering. "Nothing. But back then, I lived trying to be who everyone else wanted me to be. Now, I just want to be myself." There was a long, pregnant silence. For once, her mother didn't have a quick reply. She looked away, then down at her coffee, and finally, back at Sophia. In her eyes, Sophia saw something unfamiliar, a mix of confusion, nostalgia, and something even more unexpected: pride. "I'm glad you're happy," her mother whispered. Sophia's heart swelled. A lump rose in her throat. It was the first time she'd ever heard those words from her, and in that moment, Sophia didn't feel vindicated. She felt compassion. She saw not a distant, unfeeling mother, but a woman carrying her own unhealed story. A woman who had likely never been nurtured, who had learned that softness was weakness, that love was conditional, and that control was safety. For the first time, Sophia didn't need her mother to be different. She simply understood her. She saw her mother's wounded inner child, hidden beneath layers of toughness. And instead of resentment, Sophia felt grace. Because Jung was right, personal healing doesn't just change us. It shifts entire family dynamics. It breaks cycles. It allows us to stop bleeding on those who never cut us. Sophia knew she couldn't rewrite the past, but she could choose a new interpretation, a new relationship with her story, and that made all the difference. When she left her mother's house that evening, something heavy lifted from her shoulders. She had faced her shadow and walked through it, not with rage, not with blame, but with presence, with truth, with love. As she walked home beneath the setting sun, she felt something sacred bloom within her peace, a peace that doesn't come from perfection, but from acceptance, a peace that whispers, "You've come home." That night, before climbing into bed, Sophia lit a candle, took out her childhood photo, and held it gently in her hands. Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of deep, quiet pride. She looked at the little girl staring back at her and whispered with a trembling smile, "We did it, little Sophia. We finally did it." Sophia's story is not just hers. It's a mirror, a reflection of the little girl inside. So many of us who was once silenced, shaped, or shamed, but who never stopped hoping to be heard. So I ask you, what have you learned so far? Have you recognized pieces of yourself in Sophia's journey? The perfectionism, the people-pleasing, the fear of being too much or not enough. Have you felt the quiet ache of your inner child waiting to be chosen by you? Now, it's your turn to reflect. In the comments below, share one thing you've learned from this video, and more importantly, one thing you will begin to practice in your life starting today. Maybe it's speaking more kindly to yourself. Maybe it's dancing in the rain. Maybe it's finally saying no without guilt. Or maybe, just maybe, it's choosing you. And if this message touched your heart in any way, please leave your comment below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Because healing is a journey best taken together, and your voice might be the one that helps someone else find their own. You are not alone. You are worthy. And you are home.